evening and welcome to this edition of Defacto Review, a weekly roundup of news and current affairs here in Mongolia. I'm Grace Brown and joining me this evening is Mogi Badral-Bontoy, the CEO and founder of Cover Mongolia. We're live on Facebook at V Television. You can also follow us on Twitter, #Jargle_Defacto. Coming up on the program. A judo star businessman, Mongolia's Speaker of Parliament, or a former president? Who will be Mongolia's next president? Parliament scraps a controversial banking rule for foreign investments that almost derailed an IMF-led bailout. A district court stops the government from taking shareholder action over the ERDENET mining corporation. And Philadelphia Orchestra says it will no longer send its full contingent to Ulaanbaatar as Mongolia can no longer afford to host them. Thank you for joining us. After an eventful week, Mongolia's three main political parties have now picked their candidates to run for president later this June. We have from the Mongolian People's Party, the Speaker of Parliament, ENKHBOLD. From the Democratic Party, the former judo champion and businessman, self-made millionaire Jenko BATTULGA was picked. And for the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, Nambar Enkbayer, who was a former president. So three very high-profile, quite colourful candidates. Certainly in the case of BATTULGA, that was really the big surprise, given he lost his own seat in Parliament last year in the parliamentary elections. He's been dubbed by some as the Donald Trump of Mongolia. Why do you think the DP backed him?
Well, DP went through some internal reforms in the last couple of months with electing their deep party chairman for the first time among its memberships. They elected their ruling body, the National Policy Committee, and this choosing of their presidential candidate among all of its members was also a new sort of political development, a culture really in Mongolia where no longer does the party elect its candidates among a small group of people, but among its members. Granted that this internal elections were mired in also controversies and allegations. A lot of DP members were alleging that these internal elections did not happen correctly, and some of them were barred from even voting for its internal elections. So the criticism is that even the current registered membership of DP is little off, and not all members were able to register themselves. But choosing BATTULGA was also a surprise for me as well. My hope was on Amar Jargal, a former prime minister, who was #1 among the most ranked politicians from DP. So he came a little bit out of surprise, but good thing out of this is that the DP, even though its membership might not be the full membership that they had, that they brought a new political culture to Mongolia, similar to what the Americans do with the primary process as well.
Yes. Well, there are many factions of the DP, as we know, and BATTULGA falls in a different faction from that of the current president, Elbek. Do you think that he's seen as a non-establishment candidate? Are they deliberately taking more of a risk because he's not tainted by the same allegations of collusion between the DP and the MPP that affect Miagombo and Elbek?
Well, BATTULGA was not immune to legal troubles as well. He's also currently a suspect in a political public embezzlement case.
Yes.
That has to do with some railway contracts that government gave out in the previous
when he was Minister of Transport.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think he would like to be branded as someone who's outside the anti-establishment,
Yes.
the people's choice. But he's been in cabinet and member of parliament for many years, so it's hard for me to say that he's outside this anti-establishment of a candidate. But
he's
branding,
outside this so-called Man-an
sure, but
MPP, DP.
Between 2008 and 2012, when the MPP, the two big political parties, had a super grand coalition government, BATTULGA was also a member of the cabinet as the agriculture minister. So he has been involved in some dealings between the two
both parties.
Yes.
The MPP and the DP.
Right.
I mean, if you look at his business portfolio, Genco, his company,
Right.
it's in everything from horse meat to alcohol to the Bayangol Hotel to travel, the media, mining, banking, security. I mean, these are some very strategic sectors. Were there any potential conflicts of interest, given he was also the Minister for Transport and Agriculture at different times? Did he have to give up his stake in the company? He was no longer director after 2004, but...
Well, he was no longer director, but he still had ownership in his own group of companies. When you're a member of parliament or a member of cabinet, you have to declare your assets and incomes every year. And according to that declaration, you can still see that he owns big stakes in some of the business involvements under the Genco group of companies.
Right, right. He's also very anti-China, protectionist guy, right? What kind of policies can we expect to see from him in his campaign?
Well, it'll be hard to say, but the public criticism of him is that when he was Minister of Transportation, he derailed a railway development. That was the narrow gauge railway that was supposed to be built from Tavantolgoy down to connecting with China. He wanted to be a wide gauge and have gauges changed at the Chinese border. He's been having very public disputes with the MCS group. That has been going on for many decades, as far as I know. And Tavantolgoy, one of the companies operating in Tavantolgoy, and who won the initial contract to build a railway, was a company listed in Hong Kong, but majority mostly owned by the MCS group. So the government took that railway contract away from MCS, and when it was under government control, he said that we should not build narrow gauge railway connecting with China because it would have China dominate Mongolia economically. But publicly, he's also said that what if China decides to invade Mongolia using the railway, bringing over tanks on the railway. So he's a very controversial. He might even be even more controversial, perhaps, than ENKHBOLD right now, a former president who was also jailed
with corruption scandal over his head. Yes.
So even he might even be more controversial than the person who was jailed for corruption these days. And looking at social media the last couple of days, you can see how divisive he can be. People are joining their camps already, and even within DP, there's a lot of criticism, backlash over the decision to nominate BATTULGA.
Choose him. Very, very interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about ENKHBOLD, the Speaker of Parliament. He was Prime Minister from 2006 to 2007. He's also former Mayor of Ulaanbaatar, and he graduated from university, unlike BATTULGA. He's spent his career as a bureaucrat and an economist, so quite a conservative candidate compared to the other two. But we don't really know much about his policies. He tends to be quite opaque.
ENKHBOLD has been in politics for the past couple of decades, and he publicly said that he never owned a company or ran a business before. And during his time when he was mayor, he was alleged to have given away a lot of land to business people. Even some of the nice buildings we see today, where the land was issued, and the accusation is that he made money giving I'm not sure the term, but giving away land for free some of the land.
Illicit property deals.
Right. But he's very much establishment candidate. He, like you said, he never publicly makes any kind of mistakes. He's been party chairman for a year, and he chose not to become prime minister last year when NPP won. He had
That's
the full
right, and everybody knew then that he was probably waiting out for this.
So people's guesses and where it turned out to be true, that ENKHBOLD decided not to become prime minister, to become president the next year.
Do you think that he's more pro-foreign investment?
Well, he's from a party that's in power right now, and the NPP government is actively trying to recover the economy, signed a deal with IMF, and publicly said that they want to attract foreign investment. So I don't think ENKHBOLD, when he's president, will deviate too much from the government policies that he's a leader of.
Or the IMF program.
So if ENKHBOLD becomes president, I think he will support and continue the policies of this new parliament, new government.
So more of the same, and we know investors do like certainty, right? Now let's look at the other wild card in this race, which is Nambar Enkbayer, as we said, the former president. He hasn't been actually given the green light, though, to run. The election committee could still block him because of that corruption allegation against him.
Right. So the reason why he can't run is because he's still serving a sentence. His sentence was commuted, if that's the correct word, but he's still serving out the sentence that was given out to him on court in 2012, when he was famously arrested just before the 2012 general elections. And a district court just last week said that he's not eligible to run because he's still serving a sentence. But the NPP conference went ahead and anyway NPRP, right? Elected him as their candidate. So
NPRP, we should add, for those who are less familiar with Mongolian politics, is a spin-off from the MPP.
Right.
And that was a few years ago now. So there's fears that within the MPP that Enkbayer could take some of their votes, right?
Right. So these three political parties, it's not the first time that they're running for president. 2013, we had the same three political parties who nominated the candidate. And historically, like you said, NPRP is a spin-off of MPP party, and a lot of their base is from the old
countryside,
old MPP. So in 2013, one of the reasons Ilbuk Dorj was re-elected again was because the NPRP candidate took away a lot of the MPP candidates' vote. Odval, yes.
Who was not nominated this time.
Right. So it's
such an interesting choice, given he lost 2 elections previously for NPRP, right?
Well, the last 2016 election, Enkbayer was not eligible to run because he was still serving a sentence.
Yes.
But they did run for nominate candidates for parliament, and only one of them won last year's election, and because of that, only political parties with parliament seats can nominate presidential candidates. So we'll have maximum of 3 candidates. There will be no other options. So Election Commission will meet next week and formally register the candidates. So we'll see if they will actually register ENKHBOLD or not. My guess would be that they will not, and the MPRP will have to choose someone else. My thought behind choosing him as a candidate anyway is for political reasons. He's a party chairman, and they might say that this current government has blocked our candidate, and perhaps might do political actions based on that, and gain some media traction by protesting the government, the Election Commission's decisions.
Well, I mean, the campaign period begins on June the 6th. How dirty do you think that it could get?
Our elections can get pretty dirty, and it will be a colorful election in any case. But one interesting development is that last of the few elections, the election campaigning season has been very cut short. It used to be around 2 months, but now it's less than a month now. So, criticism would be that, new candidates, fresh faces will not be able to have enough time to appeal to the entire countryside. So only established, well-known politicians will have chance of getting elected, either in president or even parliament or local elections. So short campaigning season will only help the already established candidate.
Yeah.
And these 3 candidates, they already have their base. I don't think they'll be able to sway too much new supporters. These 3 have already been in politics for a very long time to have their own established base. I guess it depends on how much of the undecided votes will even go out and vote during the elections.
Yeah, well, so much could happen between now and June 26th, Election Day, and the outcome of that could potentially impact the $5.5 billion IMF-led bailout of the country. Earlier this week, Parliament removed a controversial hurdle to that bailout being approved, revoking a banking rule that would have forced foreign invested projects like Rio Tinto's Oyu Tolgoi copper mine to go through Mongolian banks to put all their revenues through the local banking system, which Rio was not happy about, reportedly. Now that's cleared, can we expect the IMF board to approve this?
I would hope so. I mean, the last time Mongolia, said that we cleared all the hurdles, and we came up with this new clause. So
at 2 a.m., one MP slipped it in.
Right, after midnight. And we only found out what happened even a few weeks after that decision. So Parliament was amended. One of the requirements was in early April, but we only found out a couple of weeks later that there's going to be this clause that might actually affect the IMF bailout. So
yes.
So hopefully this is the final hurdle we've cleared. And the whole issue is, why was it inserted anyway if they were going to remove it a couple of weeks later? And this is only delaying our much needed bailout to help with our economic situation.
Yeah, I mean, debt is now, double the size of the economy, and this is coming just weeks before the election. The timing is really getting tricky. Could that potentially derail things again?
I hope not. I can only hope that we won't try to delay the IMF decision again.
Have BATTULGA or ENKHBOLD said anything about what they would do if they got in with regards to the IMF program?
No, they haven't said anything yet, but the DP caucus in Parliament actually was supportive of this clause. But my guess is that they are in support of it because it's
being taken out, wasn't there?
This is a very popular kind of
it's a populist edition
clause, and being the opposition, you have to use these kind of opportunities to criticize the ruling party. So they're only a small minority in parliament, so they had no decision over how it's going to go down anyway.
That's right. The Mongolian People's Party controls most of parliament currently, 65 seats.
Out of 76, yeah.
Yes, and the DP holds just 9, and the MPRP has lonely 1 seat. The D. Erdenbat, of the head of the DP caucus, said, quote, "We should follow a policy to be independent. We should not give raw materials for free in order to take loans from abroad." Do you think that they might try and put that rule back in if BATTULGA gets in?
But they won't have any...
It sounds right up his street, quite nationalistic.
But again, they have no real power in parliament, so they might say they want to do it. They might even introduce a bill to do it.
Right.
But I don't think the ruling party will take it up. But this measure is, as I said, it's a very popular measure. Of course, we want all of our revenue to go through Mongolia. I mean, that would of course be ideal. But
Rio says the banking system is not.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is, Mongolian banking system is not up to international standards. Our credit ratings are low. It's been downgraded for the past 4 years.
Yeah, I think the best bank is Han Bank, and even Fitch or Moody's rated it as junk.
Right. So all of our big banks have the same credit rating as a sovereign.
Yes.
And Rio Tinto has a obvious fear to bring all of their revenue here because in 2013 when we were having this OT tax dispute with the Oyatolga, one tax inspector, one tax inspector went ahead and closed down, sealed off Oyatolga's bank accounts in Mongolia during the investigation process. So Oyatolga has a lot of understandable fear of bringing all of their revenue, all of their investment through Mongolian banking system. So it might not be ideal, but this is the only way a big global conglomerate like Rio Tinto can operate it and do business here. Hopefully, if we can continue to improve our financial system, our ratings.
And one day that might be possible.
Yeah, they might even choose to bring in more of their revenues through Mongolia.
Several court rulings were issued concerning the Mongolian Copper Corporation, and they went in their favor in litigation over ERDENET Mining Corporation's 49% stake. Sukhbata District Civil Court issued a preliminary injunction which blocks the government from holding shareholder meetings and taking other corporate action over the ERDENET Mining Corporation. How does this injunction actually work, Malgin? Does that mean that the government can't actually exercise any control over EMC, which it now claims to own in its entirety?
This is sort of a repeat of a previous administrative court decision. If you remember the horse racing that went ahead despite the court injunction to stop it, and the government did not follow a court order. So this is a sort of similar situation where a Mongolian a district court issues an injunction against the government. So I'm a little skeptical about how the government actually will follow this court ruling. So we'll see how it gets played out in the next week or so. But I'm glad that the court issued these rulings because I mean this ERDENET story has been controversial from the very beginning. The previous government decided not to take their full right to buy the 49% stake from the Russian government, and the new parliament said that the government did not have the right to do that. They should have asked Parliament for that approval. And I'm
rather than letting it be sold from Russia back to a Mongolian private company instead.
I think that was correct. I think the government should have went ahead and asked Parliament for approval. So, but what the new Parliament is doing is acting as if they're the judicial branch,
Which is concerning for other private businesses and foreign investors.
I think the correct way, the legal way, should have been for the government to ask the court to annul the previous government decision and then go through the court process so that they
start
can
again.
Right.
Right.
And but the government
they could be compensated up to $500 million, correct?
Right.
Mongolian Copper Corporation.
I think that's what the Mongolian Copper Corporation is claiming the government to be compensated, but the actual purchasing prices.
Where's that money going to come from?
It won't. At least this year, I think we won't have money. So
yeah.
I think nothing will be decided until after the presidential elections. Then our political establishment will have settled down. No need to be doing politics anymore, at least for even a short while. So perhaps that's when we will come to some kind of agreement with this private Mongolian company over how they're going to be compensated and how avoid any kind of court battles that might take a lot of time.
Right, right. There was also action by the administrative court to suspend all orders from the government over ERDENET. But you don't think that that's going to work either?
I'm very skeptical on how the government will react to this, and I think previous
But that again is a test of the strength of rule of law here. So it will be very interesting to see whether these injunctions are indeed enforceable or not.
That's the question.
Well, finally, the Philadelphia Orchestra may still visit Mongolia on its spring tour of East Asia, but it says it's not bringing the whole band due to austerity measures related to the IMF-led bailout. Orchestra leaders say Mongolia can no longer afford to host it from June the 2nd to the 5th. This was supposed to be an open-air performance in Sukhwata Square, so it is disappointing. Do you think classical music fans here will take the news?
Sure.
Okay.
Classical music, classical art has been quite lively here. We have a drama theater, an opera house. We have regular
fantastic ballet.
Right, a ballet. And they have a lively sort of classical art scene in Mongolia. So obviously they will be disappointed. We have some very loyal, classical art fans in Mongolia.
Yes.
This was due to in 20th century when during the communist times, these classical arts were very developed and invested in a lot by Mongolia and with help from our friends to the north. So they'll be disappointed. That's I guess it's unavoidable.
Hopefully they do still come, even if it is with a much smaller contingent. And hopefully there'll be more money for music in Mongolia again soon. That brings this edition of Defacto Review to an end. I'm Grace Brown. That was Mogi Badral Bontoy from Cover Mongolia. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you can tune in again next week. Sayonara. Good night.
Good night.